It's that time of year once again as we wrap up 2021. I welcome in gorgeous George Garcia, our MMA Junkie rankings head, to take a little look at the biggest movers and shakers of 2021. And George, let's just jump into it. Let's start in the heavyweight division. Cyril Gone, who we actually talked about last year as a big mover as well, had another big this year. Started the year at number 8. He's at number 3 right now as we wrap it up. And gosh, he could be number 2, maybe even number 1 really, really soon.
Yeah, that interim strap was tremendous for him because it controlled his future, meaning now he'll get to unify with Francis Ngannou. But look, when you're undefeated and you're rolling through the UFC like that, and you look good, the skill set, he's performing. When he performs on fight night, you can tell that if it goes to a decision or he gets the finish, he just shows he's the better competitor, and that's what'll get you bumped up.
No question about it. Massive opportunity for him on the horizon. Another name I wanted to ask you about, Tai Tuivasa, kind of had a career resurgence this year, right? Started out the year unranked. I wasn't sure he'd ever get back into the rankings. I didn't know if it was just kind of a flash in the pan or what, but he's number 10 as we end the year.
For sure. And, this guy, it reminds me of Tank Abbott. I mean, if anybody's as old school as that name, Tank Abbott, and then with a twist of Stone Cold, with him doing the shoeies. But it's not based off entertainment, the rankings are. It's based off his win streaks, and you're always going to get maybe that extra jump if you can be emphatic. And that's what Tai Tuivasa has been as he's won these last four in a row. He's got some good names, that he's beaten, and he's finished them.
Hey, Tank Abbott and Stone Cold. That's not a bad combination of personalities there. Quick mentions, by the way, Tom Aspinall, Chris Dawkins look like kind of the future of the heavyweight division. They made their way into the rankings this year. Take a look at light heavyweight. Yuri Provosky moved from number 13 to start the year to number 6. Obviously served as a championship backup. I mean, big moments for him coming up as well. This is a guy that made big moves this last year.
Yeah, for sure. And, he wasn't as active as he's been in other years, but he made it count. He beat Dominic Reyes, and if you remember, that was a spectacular spinning kick that he caught him with. And Dominic Reyes has been a long time top 3 guy, so he made his one opportunity count against somebody who's been one of the killers in that division. And yes, on the side note, being a sub also improves your chances of getting to a title fight.
No question about it. Big year for him, kind of coming out of nowhere for a lot of people. I don't think he was on a lot of people's radar not that long ago, and now he's a legitimate contender. I guess if you're mentioning light heavyweight, you got to make mention of Glover Teixeira. Yes, he was already number 5 entering the year, but number 1 now in UFC champ. What a great story that is. And how about the return of Anthony Johnson as well? He was unranked, of course, because he wasn't fighting, and now he's sitting at number 7 and in a very prime spot to hopefully have some big fights as long as everything heals up. And he's doing okay. Middleweight division had some big names come in as well. George, I want to ask you about a couple of them. Sean Strickland started out the year unranked, and he's now number 10. Andre Muniz was unranked as well. He's number 12. Those are 2 new names to the rankings that both look like very dangerous fighters.
Both have good records, and they have good streaks going, but it's those pivotal names, beating Uriah Hall for Strickland, beating Jacare Souza for Muniz, and then obviously each guy had a 2-0 year. But when you have a good record and you have these win streaks, you're going to make those moves, but you got to get over, when you're unranked, you got to get over on someone in the top 15. When you're languishing in that area, you got to beat someone in the top 10 and so on. And both guys handled their business when it was time to shine.
Yeah, they're both lined up for some big fights in 2022, so an opportunity for them to move up even further. Did want to mention a couple of veteran stalwarts in there. Derek Brunson was started out the year at 6. He finished at number 3. Marvin Vettori started out the year as number 8. He finished at number 5, so they kept themselves very relevant in the division and even inched up in a division that's hard to make moves in. Guys, welterweight, George, there was a ton of moves in welterweight, so I want to kind of ask you what stood out to you there. Let me kind of outline everything that happened here. Leon Edwards started the year at number 9. He's now up to number 4. Hopefully he's got a title shot coming. He's been sitting on that opportunity for a long time. Yaroslav Amosov, honorable mention to start the year. He's now number 5 and an undefeated Bellator champion. Big name there. Vicente Luque from 11 to number 6. The veteran making some moves there. Bilal Muhammad had a big year. Number 15. He's now sitting at number 7. And a new name, Sean Brady, was unranked to start the year. He's now at number 10. So a lot of people making big moves at welterweight.
For sure. That one's one of the tougher ones, because there's just a lot of fighters that have good records and have had either good streaks or runs. Runs like, hey, he's won 9 out of 10. So it may not be 10 in a row, but they're on a good run. And I'll address a couple of them. Edwards, for all he's been through, time off, canceled fights. Remember, he was going to fight Shimyan like 3 times. That didn't pan out. Then he beats Nate Diaz, he looks good for 24 minutes, but everybody remembers that he almost got knocked out in the 25th minute, but he's chugged along, and now he's in a prime position to fight, for a title. Hopefully we'll see, because if you'll recall, a few weeks ago was supposed to be Masvidal, so it all depends, because he's just kind of been the victim of bad luck. He caught Usman in a year where Usman was super busy. Bilal Muhammad, huge skin on his wall to beat Stephen Thompson, who's been, a top 5 guy in that division for a long time. Amosov, he was the beneficiary of the hard work that Roy McDonald and Douglas Lima have put in making themselves ranked fighters. So when he goes in there with that shiny record and is as dominant as he is, that's why he's able to get that catapult.
Yeah, a lot of shifting in there. Interesting in the welterweight division. How about lightweight? Traditionally one of the most stacked divisions in the sport. No change this past year. A lot of big names there. But the two names that stood out to me, Beneil Dariush went from number 15 to number 5. Islam Makhachev went from number 13 to number 6. Obviously, they've got a big fight coming up. That's a big one in the rankings as well. But what do you make of those two's rise this year?
For sure, Makhachev, he's pretty amazing, and I agree that he should be in that next wave. The winner of him versus Dariush should get the winner of Gaethje versus Oliveira, as long as Conor McGregor doesn't upset the party and ruin the party, because he has that power to do that. But no, look, if you just go by wins and losses, Makhachev's put himself in an excellent position. Dariush reminds me of a name you also brought up, Derek Brunson. He's a guy that had his run initially, then had a little bit of adversity, a couple losses, and then he's on another run against these, and he keeps hanging around because he stays active and he wins key fights and he's in streaks. So I'm really, really happy to see Dariush kind of get that second life, if you will.
Yeah, no question about that. I'll tell you, Michael Chandler was actually unranked to start the year. He had slipped out of the rankings. He finishes at number 9, so a big year for him. And talking about the depth of the lightweight division, check this out. Number 12, Mark Madsen. Number 13, Grant Dawson. Number 14, Arman Sharukin. And number 15, Rafael Fiziev. None of them were ranked to start the year, and now they're all sitting in the rankings and all look like they have some bright futures ahead of them. So that lightweight division is always stacked. Looking at the lighter weight classes, Giga Chikadze, from unranked to number 12 at featherweight. AJ McKee, briefly number 1 in the world. He didn't make a big move, but I thought that was amazing for a featherweight, well, really any weight class outside the UFC to briefly hold a number 1 spot. That was amazing. Merab Dvalishvili at bantamweight went from honorable mention all the way up to number 5. And over in one championship, Adriano Moraes went from unranked to number 7. Yes, it was only one fight, but it was beating Demetrius Johnson. Some big moves in the lighter weight classes.
For sure. And a lot of those guys, when they made those moves, they also had the records to back it up. So all we were left wondering was, hey, listen, it seems like you win way more than you lose. You haven't lost since 2017, but can you beat fill in the blank? And those guys started filling in those blanks. For Moraes, I'm glad you brought him up. Huge win over there against Demetrius Johnson. Dvalishvili and we'll take the Georgians. Georgia's in the house. Dvalishvili and Giga, hey, look, they had a lot of promise and a lot of love, but it wasn't until they beat what it was Stamen and Moraes for Dvalishvili and Swanson and Barbosa for Giga Chikadze, and that got them to leap up. So not only do you become more popular and you become more sellable for the promotion, you also move up in the rankings.
That's right. We're paying attention to you no matter where you fight. So get the victories and you'll get the rewards and the rankings. I'll say on the women's side, not a ton of movement this year. Obviously, you had Juliana Pena, of course, the big story of the year in the women's division, upsetting Amanda Nunes. But, of course, she was already at the top anyway. But she is a UFC champion, which is big. The biggest mover of the whole women's side was actually Amanda Lemos. She went from honorable mention to number 8. So, a couple new names in the women's division, but a lot of it kind of stand pat as those top stars continue to remain top contenders. So listen, it was a big year in the rankings, a lot of movement. I'm sure 2022 will be just as fun. We'll update the rankings every single week, and we'll talk about it as well on the rankings.